I do have a lot of confidence in Chair Powell. By the way, it's fun I can now talk about the Fed. I wasn't allowed to talk about Fed policy for many years. I guess my most important advice to the administration is don't do anything to shock the economy. So they had been talking about raising taxes. They had been talking about making different changes. Now is not the time to put any additional shocks. Things like gas tax on the margin may help a little bit, but this is really now the Federal Reserve's job, and the administration needs to be careful not to get in the way. I do think, the number one thing the administration can do, and I think it's not just them, it's obviously other world leaders, is we need to find a political solution to this war. The military solution alone is not going to be what stops this.
You have confidence in Chairman Powell, whom you know well, having worked together with him and other members of the Federal Reserve. The reality, however, is that financial markets aren't certain whether they have confidence in Chairman Powell. There's a growing consensus that the Federal Reserve isn't raising rates fast enough, and the Fed lost credibility with its perspective on inflation that it was transitory. Two questions. Do you think that the Federal Reserve needs to raise rates at a faster clip than they have outlined for the American public, and for that matter, for the world? And what will it take to restore that lost credibility?
Well, let me just say, it wasn't just the Federal Reserve. The administration also was talking about inflation would be under control. So, I think from the Fed standpoint, in hindsight, they clearly waited too long. But having said that, when you're managing the economy and you're the Federal Reserve, I think you have to balance both sides of that equation. I don't buy that the Fed has lost credibility. I think the fact that the Fed moved in 75 basis points, which a month ago is not what the market expected. I think Chair Powell has now signaled another 75 basis points. I think if you look at the dot plots, which I never was a big fan of these dot plots, but that's another story. I think the market understands that expectations are the Fed's going to raise rates. I think the portfolio is just as important, and they're beginning to slow that down. Look, a year ago I said we're going to have 10-year treasuries 3 to 3.5%, and people thought that was really high. We basically have 10-year treasuries at 3 to 3.5%. If the market really didn't have credibility in the Fed, the long end would be a lot higher than it is.